Hello and welcome to Talking Books. I'm Jill de Villiers. For many of us, when faced with challenges, we go through an inner dialogue. One side telling us we have what it takes to overcome everything, and the other side telling us not to take the risk, not to attempt the impossible. My guest today is Lee Den Hont, whose mindset is to focus on why she should do something daring and impossible. Her book is What Happens When You Say Yes? Altitude, Attitude and a Greater Purpose, How to Live 100% Life. Lee, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jill. Great to be here.
You have made so many daring decisions in your life. Shall we start with the very first one that you made, to leave Pretoria for Cape Town and to find a job with Nike or Adidas?
Yes, I have an educational background in that I've got a teaching diploma, not that I've ever taught, but I had this dream and vision that I wanted to work for a sportswear company, and that's what led me to knock on the doors of Nike. The door closed, then of Reebok, the door closed, and then eventually I got into Adidas, where I was for 2.5 years, and then fortunately I did make it to Nike in Cape Town, which was an incredible experience.
But tell me how you got that job, because you went with no contacts,
yes.
Nothing,
yes.
You just went,
yes.
Trusting and with complete faith.
Absolutely, Jill, as I do with everything in my life, is I was so badly wanted to work for one of these international sportswear brands, and I'm very goal driven, I'm very goal set in terms of always starting with the end in mind. And it was in December, and I said to my partner at the time is that by the 1st of April next year, which is my birthday, I'll be working for either Nike, Adidas or Reebok. My partner said, but you don't even know anybody at these brands. But it didn't matter, I had a vision for this. And it was in 1993, before Google, before the internet, and I went through the yellow pages and I looked up the contact of Nike down in the Cape Town office, and I picked up the phone and I said very enthusiastically to the person who answered, who was Gary van Rooyen, running the Nike branch in Cape Town. I said, please could you give me 10 minutes of your time? I went to see him, and in 10 minutes I said, I'm prepared to do absolutely anything for this brand. And he said, unfortunately our head office is in Gauteng. And I got home, went through the yellow pages again and approached Reebok, said, please just give me 10 minutes of your time. Anyway, and they said exactly the same, is that our head office is not here, it's in Gauteng. And then the one company that was based there was Adidas. And fortunately that day when I phoned, the PA of somebody very key who heads up the marketing department answered the phone, and I said, please just give me 10 minutes of your time. And he said, but why? And I very boldly said, I want you to tell me how one day I could possibly have your job. Anyway, Jill, he gave me 10 minutes of his time, and I saw him on the 26th of February, and they actually created a position for me. My first day of employment was the 1st of April.
Wow.
Yes, amazing.
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 And then another bold decision you made was to, in the meantime you moved back to Johannesburg.
That's correct.
And then you made a decision to go to New York also.
Absolutely. My dreams just got bigger and bigger, and as they got bigger, they also became very, very, very unrealistic. I was 30 years old at the time, and I resigned from Nike, which was in Johannesburg, and I went to New York City with this big dream and vision to work for Nike in Manhattan, in New York City. I went there, and I arrived in the reception area. I asked if I could please see somebody in the marketing department. I handed over my CV, and the person looked quite confused, saying to me, but are you here have you relocated? Are you here just for a vacation? I said, no, I've actually relocated to work for Nike. And they looked at me and they said, in a very formal but yet gentle way, is that the Nike head office is in Portland, Oregon, and that there were no job opportunities in Manhattan. And so that was kind of the start and the end of my Nike career in Manhattan. But New York was a very defining time in my life.
So tell me why. What did you experience in New York that really changed things?
New York, I was so committed to something that I thought was my goal and my big plan, but God had another plan for me. So every door was shut and closed. Before I knew it, I was working 3 jobs, 7 days a week. I was living there illegally. At the age of 30, I was doing very much student work, and it's a bit like Stephen Covey talks about when you get to the top of the ladder and you realize your ladder is actually against the wrong building, and that was exactly what New York City was for me. You know, I had this vision of working for Nike, and it absolutely wasn't going to happen. And New York, defining time in my life, one of the worst things that ever happened to me. I'd been there for 6 weeks, and I got stabbed. I'd worked my 3 jobs in the one day. I got home, it was 12:15 at night. I was about 100 meters from the apartment block I was staying, and I was actually stabbed in the back by a knife. With a knife for my backpack, which I had all of $3 in.
Wow.
I know, not great, not great.
And then you came back to South Africa. And how was the recovery?
The recovery, well, I still stayed for the duration of my visa, and the day my visa was up, I flew back to South Africa. And why I say New York was a defining time in my life is that when I got back to South Africa, I had 2 choices, either to step back into the sportswear industry or to do something, to take a risk and to have enough courage to say, you know what, I'm actually going to start my own business. And I've been running my company for 19 years.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about your company.
My company, we're based in Johannesburg. The company is called Blue Platinum Events. We do events all over South Africa as well as internationally. Yes, we've had an incredible journey. We've worked incredibly hard, done some things that have never ever been done before, and I'm very, very proud of the business journey. And I've got an awesome team, and every day is a new day in the world of Blue Platinum.
But shortly after you established your business, you started going into extreme sports, endurance sports.
Yes.
And tell me about that.
In terms of endurance sports, I've been really fortunate to do 5 full Ironman. And well, the biggest, let's say, extreme thing that I did was in 2013 when I took on Everest as a novice climber. I'd only done one mountain in my life, which was Kilimanjaro. And then to take on Everest, big difference. Kilimanjaro is the 4-day up, 2-day down, and Everest is 2 months. And then after Everest, I always knew my next adventure would find me, which was from the extreme cold to the extreme heat. I ran a race, 251 kilometers in the Sahara Desert. It's known as the toughest foot race in the world. And my next extreme event is actually in November this year. I'm planning to participate as one of the athletes in one of the highest altitude races in the world. And that is back 160 kilometers near Everest.
So how high is that?
Well, so one of the points of this race actually goes to the height of Camp 1, which is over 6 kilometers. So it's incredibly high. And I know that the altitude and the lack of oxygen will be my biggest challenge. Yeah.
So let's talk about Everest, because that is what the bulk of the book is about.
Yes.
And deciding to go without really having experience. You started doing research, and I think you gave yourself an 8-month gap in which to climb Everest.
Yes.
And your very first decision was to go in December, the worst time of year.
Yes, absolutely. And then I very quickly learned, because as not a mountaineer, a complete novice at it besides one mountain, is that mountaineering, and especially summiting, it has its own calendar. You can't just decide, well, I'm going to climb Everest, the highest mountain in the world, in December, because that's when I've got leave and it actually suits me. Most definitely not. There are only 2 months in the year that you can summit Everest, and that is April and it's May. So December definitely wasn't part of it. And also the duration is that it takes 2 months to tackle that mountain.
So you had advice. You're the 3rd South African woman to have summited Everest.
Yes.
You got some advice from the 2nd woman.
That's correct, Mandy Ramsden, an incredible woman. Mandy had done all the 7 summits, and when I reached out to her, I said, I'm taking on Everest, and she was absolutely amazing. I said, she's very, very experienced in mountaineering, having done all the biggest summits in the world, and she was really amazing, very, very encouraging. She said, gave me a piece of advice, also same as Lewis Pugh, so you must go with the right company, go with the correct expedition company. A lot of people have lost their lives on Everest. It's a dangerous mountain, and yes, I got some great guidance from her. Great woman.
Another person you also got guidance from was Sibusiso Villiers.
Incredible man. He's the first African man. He summited from the north and the south, and I had coffee with him, and I said, I want to tackle this mountain. And the big piece of advice that Sibu gave me, and Mandy, because also Sibu's done all the top mountains and was, as a novice climber, do you think I'm going to make it? And neither one of them had any doubt in their mind.
That you would make it. Did you have any doubt in your mind ever?
I only doubted, Jill, at one point. I'd been on that mountain for 7 weeks, and when I was on top of Everest, and that's the first chapter of my book about that, I want to get off the top of the world and I need to get back into the death zone. It took me from the death zone, which you're already up at 8,000 meters, to get to the top of the world, which is 848 meters. It took me 14.5 hours. And at one point, I didn't think I was going to get back to the death zone. My body was out of control. I was freezing cold, and everything was shutting down, as your system does when you're at this height. The human body's not meant to be at a height of over 8,000 meters. I didn't think I was going to get back, but I did. And so I'm sitting back here today, enjoying this interview.
Now, as an athlete, you are extremely fit. So people think that the fitter you are, the better you would cope on the mountain.
No, unfortunately not. And that's why I always say Everest was the hardest thing I've done in my life, and it was my greatest gift, because I completely underestimated that. I thought, yes, I've done Ironman, I've done endurance events, all these things are going to get me through. It doesn't count on the mountain, not at all. You can be the fittest person ever. Can your body manage the environment? Can you manage the altitude, the lack of oxygen? And that's not about your extreme athlete credentials. That's, can you do it or can you not do it?
Were you, the death zone is the area where people don't return from, that a lot of people die where there are bodies. You write about that climbing up there, you know that there are bodies around you.
Absolutely. You know, Everest, it's a big eye-opener in terms of that it's a dangerous mountain, and there are almost 300 dead bodies on that mountain. The death zone is one of the most dangerous parts of the climb, and people say, but why is it called the death zone? Because it's exactly in there and out of there as fast as possible. If you have to cut yourself at on the death zone, your body won't heal, not at all. All your body wants to do is shut down. Your organs are starting to shut down, and yeah, it's not called the death zone for nothing.
So you say as well that as you were climbing there, you realize you are slowly dying.
Well, your system is shutting down. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I battled so much from the top of Everest back to the death zone. And what I talk about in my book is Everest is a bit like life. It's not how you start something, it's how you finish it. Because if you get to the top of Everest and you summit successfully, but you don't get down, they don't count as a summit. Not at all. You've got to get up and you've got to get down, because more people die. More people lose their lives on the way down.
So what would be your defining lesson in life, in business, from Everest?
Is that I don't want to say that nothing is impossible, but I do want to say that nothing is impossible. As a novice climber, I made it to the top of the world. I've entered things that I thought that I wouldn't finish, that I couldn't do. But if you're committed to the end and you start with the end in mind, but more importantly with that, Jill, and the essence of Everest for me, as I was the greatest gift, because it was the biggest challenge of my life, is that when I thought I wasn't going to come down, I kept on thinking, but why are you doing this? What is your purpose? What is your purpose? Why are you really here? Somebody didn't force you. You actually paid to be there. And I really believe in life, in business, in day-to-day living, in extreme sports, on Everest. And that is when your purpose is bigger than your challenge. That you cannot, there's no finish line that you cannot cross. No. Not at all.
So whether your Everest is actually an Everest, or whether it is overcoming a bad marriage or finding a new job.
Absolutely, challenges in life, 100%.
Thank you so very much for coming in and chatting to
Jill.
us.
Thank you for having me.
It was really great chatting to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So just to recap, my guest is Lee Den Hont, and her book is What Happens When You Say Yes, Altitude, Attitude and a Greater Purpose, How to Live 100% Life. And that was that for this edition of Talking Books. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.